Hi, everybody. Welcome to the OFM podcast. And I'm your host, Peter Defty. And today on our podcast, we have Bree Lambert-Sanders, who's a Vespa OFM athlete ambassador, and her husband, Joe Sanders, who's also a Vespa OFM athlete. Both real high-level athletes who are well into their fifth decade of life and crushing it. Really crushing it. And Bree, don't take this badly, but I'm going to say you're the female equivalent of Jeff Browning. Because
that's a compliment.
You're like I say, Jeff Browning's the guy who's in ultra running, who's doing everything right in terms of the male ultra runner doing OFM to get the results and both the short-term race results, but also the long-term health benefits and longevity. Mm-hmm. You're precisely that role model right now, because the funny thing is a lot of the gals I've worked with whom you know have just decided they want to take another direction in life. They're not still racing, and you're just like Jeff. You're out there still crushing it.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
And so folks, Bree is, I'll just say she's on the other end of her fifth decade, and take a good look. You're not going to, you take a good look at this. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of this. And yes, she has some great genes and she does all the stuff, and I'm not taking any credit away from her, but you know, she's adopted this lifestyle and uses Vespa, and it's, she's easy on the eyes.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too, Joe. And I even though I'm not going to trade a friend for a piece of hide, so you're safe. She's gorgeous, beautiful, and desirable, and she's yours.
And she's the real deal. She follows this protocol to the T, and I'm a witness to that.
Right. So I want to back way up so the audience can relate. You heard about OFM when I first started doing it from Rob Evans. Exactly. And you as a person with a college education and a postgraduate education, MS in nutrition, what did you think? Tell us about that initial journey when Rob said.
Yeah. I'm trying not to be distracted by our cats, just so you know.
They're going crazy.
They're going nuts. We have several cats, and
it's my animal magnetism. I can't help it.
Exactly. It's like you just like ignited something. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, Rob Evans was running Tahoe Rim. He was doing, various ultras, and he started to talk about, this Vespa product, and I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't even understand. And it was really hard for him to explain it, but, I saw what he was doing. I remember going out to dinner with him one night, and he was eating, a piece of steak, and he was having some, a baked potato and, put butter and sour cream on it. And this was his pre-race dinner. And so I was so intrigued by it. And, he couldn't, I'll be honest, he really couldn't clearly articulate what it was about, other than to say that, it was essentially, it pertained to using fat as your primary fuel, and that you had to ingest, some protein and some fat, and that was essentially, the better way to fuel for endurance. And me coming to this.
But he wasn't cutting out the carbs entirely.
He wasn't. No, he was eating a baked potato, at dinner. But
eating donuts on some of his runs.
Exactly. That's right. He would tell Joe that he was having some donuts from time to time. But all of it is to say is that what he was talking to me about was so contrary to what I had learned about, in the academic arena, in university, and studying nutrition and studying, about, physiology and how nutrition paired with physiology, in terms of endurance, athletics, how that went hand in hand. But the emphasis at that time was on carbohydrates. This is where back in the 80s, right, Joe? Yes. And it was all about the carbo load. And it was, you'd go to pasta dinners before marathons, and it was all about, doing a number of, then it was, GU is literally, I think GU and Hammer were the only two gels around. I mean, there's nothing, there weren't the number of nutritional products on the market that there are today. But all that is to say that carbohydrates were the primary fuel. And so this product, Vespa, and this knowledge of, well, no, actually you have copious amounts of fat and you can use that to burn, efficiently, but you have to train your body to do that, was really contrary to what I had been learning about. And so I was definitely skeptical and I was not keen on it initially. Back then I was focusing more on, shorter distance road races and doing I was dabbling in triathlon, road triathlon, mountain bike triathlon, but hadn't jumped into ultra running until the early 2000s. So before that, I was focusing primarily on the road stuff, and then a little bit of mountain bike. So anyway, all that is to say, it was definitely not something that I really could get behind. However, I decided going into my ultra season, and I remember vividly 2009, after seeing Rob's progress, and after seeing his performance,
top 15 finish at Western States.
Exactly that, and then also how well he did at Tahoe Rim. And I think it was definitely in the early 2000s, because I didn't do Tahoe Rim 100 until 2009. I think he did it in like 2007 or something.
Well, I think he started in 2008 or 2009. He's one of my first early adopters.
Yeah. And so it was really interesting for me to sit back and say, you know what, there's got to be something to this. Like, it's
right, because also you saw John Pommier and some of the other
John
runners,
Jenny Capel, Roxanne Woodhouse, and so they were really, I think, to your point, early adopters. And they were people that I thought, okay, you know what, they're yielding good results. I respect them as athletes. And so I thought, you're always looking for that, that next best thing, that thing that's going to give you a little edge. And so a little edge over your competition. And so I thought, well, I'm going to try it. And I did, and ever since I tried it and started integrating it into my training, into my racing plan. And also as I started to understand more about fat adaptation and metabolic efficiency, and really understand it, from a physiological perspective, it made all the sense in the world, and it still does. So,
no, and this is why I wanted you to relay this story, because most athletes out there are only being given one option, and that is you need lots of carbohydrates. This is what your primary fuel source is, which is basically a flawed statement, because in the modern world, physiologically, most people are carbohydrate dependent. But from an evolutionary biology perspective, we're meant to burn fat as our aerobic energy source.
Yes. Yeah.
And we've just lost our way. So Bree, as an elite athlete, it took you some time, and that's what I want the audience to know is this sounds really strange, and it's not keto, it's not low carb, but it's not super high carb either. And so, just like you saw people having results with this, and even though you'd been taught a different way, it's like the reality, that's where the rubber meets the road, right, Joe? You've been a competitive athlete all your life.
Yeah, I spent my whole life. I started racing when I was 11 and was very successful in running, but always dealt with lots of injuries. And later I made 4 world duathlon teams as a pro, and that was quite the experience. I was always good at the short stuff, struggled with the longer stuff because I never really truly understood the nutritional aspect of it. Matter of fact, one year at Powerman, I remember when I had passed Kenny Souza and he totally blown up, and he asked me, "What have you been eating?" And I was like, nothing. I'm just drinking this liquid that they're giving us in that race course, and handed me a power bar. I did all sorts of crazy sports, and now I'm going to jump in 2026 into the ultra running, maybe have some fun with Jeff Browning. But my education goes way back as well. And my dad was a very scientific mind. He was part of the San Jose Racing Pigeon Club racing, and he was a naturalist. He really studied nature. And he always tried to push them on me, you need more fats. They support your hormones, they support your recovery, they support muscle breakdown, they are good for your vascular system versus the common mythology that people thought back then, you needed the carbs. And it turns out now the carbs are not good for your vascular system in excess. But the main thing was that with his pigeon racing, and I saw it firsthand, he was very successful with the pigeon racing, and everybody was coming to him like, what's going on? How is it you're winning all the races? And for a long time, he didn't tell them, and he would be, joke around with them. Oh, I'm giving him this, but would never tell him exactly what he was doing. And then, of course, you look at, all you have to do is look at nature. You look at these long distance animals and what they're eating versus other animals that are eating different fuel types. But in my opinion, having done this and studied it for a long time, I mean, I understand where people are with the carbs. You do need carbs. I mean, carbs are the igniter to being able to continuously burn fat. But I also think that we're going down, and a lot of elites are going down a rabbit hole of limited performance in longevity. And I think that it's going to have an effect on their health in the long run. Personally, I think it's just not healthy. I know how, like when I eat sugars and carbs, how I feel versus when I eat more protein and fats, how I feel. And it's a significant difference.
Mm-hmm.
We both know it because we know and love you, and we know when you get on the coffee and pastries.
Yeah,
you're
I was guilty of that for a long time. Yeah.
We worry about you. So let's your dad, when we started getting on the thing of pigeon racers, and I mentioned that I knew Chick.
Oh yeah.
I helped frame his house out in the valley.
Yeah.
Is like, your dad used a lot of oils and fats in the feed. It was a higher fat feed.
Wow.
And all you have to do is look at nature. I mean, there's a certain ptarmigan that flies from Alaska to New Zealand nonstop.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't even know its way, and it makes that flight. And, these migrations of geese and all that, that's not done on glucose and glycogen. And like I say, if you think about it from an evolutionary biology standpoint, if we needed a gel every 30 minutes to keep from bonking, we would have never made it here as a species because, primitive man didn't carb load the night before, have a bowl of oatmeal in the morning, grab his spear and some gels and go out hunting. Yeah. He basically had to go out hunting fasted, and he had to perform as if his life depended on it because it did.
Yeah. And, Peter, that's interesting because when you think about modern athletes and you think about sugars and carbs, you feel that rush of energy. And I think a lot of athletes feel this rush of energy and they think, oh, it's working. Where with using fat, you don't feel an instantaneous,
you're not getting that.
It's more of an even burn. And I think in our society with our phone, everything is instantaneous. We have to have that. I have to feel it, right?
Gosh, yeah.
And it's not true. I think that they're going down, like I said, I think they're going down the wrong rabbit hole. Not to mention all the gastrointestinal issues that you potentially could have.
We'll talk about that because there's some new papers coming out that are real interesting that we'll share with people later on this. But let's put the focus on Bree right now because she's the star. Okay, Bree, I want you to you're riding the wave, right?
I am.
You raced the CCC, the UTMB-CCC, which is a roughly 100K race. Mm-hmm. You were the first woman in your age group and third woman over 50.
That's right.
Right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And then you turn around, 7 weeks later? Mm-hmm. And raced Kodiak, and you were, I'm not going to say you were first in your age group. I'm going to say you were the second place over 40.
That's
and
right.
You just ran out of real estate on the 40-year-old.
Exactly. Yeah. Second female over 40, I think 16th female overall, and number 55 out of 521 athletes. So, at 57 years old, I'm pretty happy about that.
And I think it's so interesting. I watch her and stuff, and it's, people don't realize, like the younger people don't realize that the effect that time has on your body and how incredible of a performance that is to be able to race to that level as you're getting older. And, the young folks are going to feel it when they're 50, 51. Maybe some of them will feel it in their 40s, but it's pretty impressive.
Well, yeah, it is. And to your credit, Bree, even before you found Vespa and OFM, you were living a very healthy lifestyle. And fortunately, you didn't go down that rabbit hole that's currently going on with all this hyped up advertising of every supplement under the sun. Like you need a sleep supplement, you need a ketone supplement, you need this supplement, you need that supplement. Your training had you eating pretty much supplementation was supplementation. Most of your nutrition came from a healthy whole food diet.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
So while you probably had more carbs than you do now in it overall, there was probably a whole lot of whole foods and non-starchy vegetables and fresh foods in there that compensated for, the higher carb load, not to mention you were younger. And one of the things to your point, Joe, is here's Bree at 57. Now we got her age out of her age is now out of the basket on her own accord. You didn't have to say it. But that's the point. It's like, you're not going to stop the aging, but if you get your body back into that fat burning state, you can slow it down to a crawl.
You can also minimize inflammation.
That's one of the reasons why you slow your aging down.
Yeah. And performance as well. I mean, inflammation is a huge factor in day-to-day training, and people they don't realize it. They don't, like I said, they don't feel it immediately. They don't know what's happening in their bodies.
No, they don't. And that's, like you say, everybody's looking for some hit they can notice. And, like I tell people, when you take a Vespa, what you're going to notice is what you don't notice.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I also think it's
a good way to put it.
And stress too, right? So stress management, that's huge. And I really do try to live my life stress-free. I mean, I think, well, Joe and I...
It's a huge stress to me, but no, in a good way.
Joe and I have had, a lot of stress over the last...
Your own creation, but you've had stress.
Yeah. Right. But no, we've had our share of stress.
Yeah.
And, but however, I think that we work hard to stress release. And I think, especially given where we live in the Bay Area, the Bay Area moves at a very fast pace. It's very populated. It's expensive. There's a lot going on here. And so it would be easy for us to just get caught up, in the wave of activity. And I think we try really hard to balance our lives as much as we can to make, exercise a priority, to make nutrition, healthy living a priority. And, and I think more people need to do that. They need to pay attention to not just, to Joe's point, those inflammatory foods, but also how are they living day to day? How are they managing the stress that is happening around them?
Like I say, the stress, the stress of all these small, minor chronic stressors that pings your cortisol pathway. Exactly. Those are as big a deal as too many carbohydrates in the diet.
Mm-hmm.
Without a doubt. So unless you are aware of it and you really are intentional about how are you going to build in stress relievers in your life without resorting to, artificial, whatever, you anesthetize yourself, with alcohol or with, to your point, sleep medication because you can't sleep at night, or do you know what I mean? You're just, or too much caffeine. Any of those things can easily just smash you. And then what's going to happen is all of that is going to impact. Ultimately, if you want to perform well, it's going to impact performance.
Well, and it's not that difficult, but like you say, I mean, before I go down that rabbit hole, I want to say that to the audience that every time I go to the peninsula, that area where you live, the vibe there now is this frantic energy.
Yeah.
It's weird for me coming out of the Central Valley and even, the mountains where I run, I run in the Sierra foothills and in the High Sierra by myself, where it's like, just me and nature a lot of the times, or me and a buddy, and we're out there. And you go into San Jose, Los Gatos, that area, and I don't know what it is, but it just feels like there's this like nervous energy about everybody. I'm not saying everybody, but it's just because there's some great people like you, like Dr. Leahy, I know so many great people there, but it's like the overall vibe is just like a little bit frantic.
Yeah. And I think that's the way to describe it. I think, and if you're not aware of it, it's easy to get caught up in it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so when you look at all these things, there's, like I, as a biologist, look at everything as simply biology, and that's been my way of answering the question. So I don't look at stress as good or bad. It's just the context of it, right? So when you have all these minor stressors, emotional, psychological stressors, and chronic physical stressors, that kind of stress is really not good for you. But whereas the stress of training, the stress of getting curious and challenging yourself mentally to solve problems, stress can be good, and it can be a thing to move you forward, or it can be a thing to just drag you down. Right.
It's definitely how you deal with the stress. Even in San Jose, today I was riding my bike, and when I rode in the 80s and the 90s, it was a great place to ride. Today I was like, this is nuts. Like I'm glad I don't train on a bicycle anymore, because the people are not paying attention. All the debris is in the bike lane. It's just not a good place. And how do you deal with all these stressors? I think you just have to take a deep breath and accept it for what it is. Kind of like in a race. When you're hitting a hard point in a race, you just have to take a deep breath and settle in and go, okay, how can I get through this point right now? This is just people always talk about it, but they don't really talk about the mental side of endurance. Not a lot of people do. And I think that stress is good in the right way, as long as you can handle it the right way.
Stress works well as an adaptive force. When you have stress and then you take the stress away, you recover, you get stronger, right? Whereas today's lifestyle has people constantly stressed about this or that, the latest text on their phone. It's like I say, modern technology, modern living is pinging some very primitive fight or flight hardwiring in us as human animals in ways it was never meant to be pinged. So we're chronically getting that tiger jumping out of the bush to eat us. And people don't realize the small ways that it's happening, and how they have to be, like you say, mindful of how do we either, if it can't go away, how do we mitigate that or take a different approach to it? Or how do we minimize this stuff? Because I think a lot of this electronic stuff, especially including in sports, I mean, everybody's got the latest device. They've got to have this gadget, and this gadget is they're ruled by these gadgets and the data from it. And it's like I say, the data corroborates the experience. It doesn't drive it.
That's right.
And like you guys both have raced for a long time, and that feeling where you're not looking at your watch, your speedometer, your Garmin, your heart rate, you just know, and you're down and racing. That's a very primitive thing, but it's like when your body is physically, biomechanically, and metabolically fit, your feedback mechanism is your best device, I guess, for lack of better words.
I agree.
I'll tell you.
I agree.
And like the cool thing about all these gadgets, whether it's a glucose meter or a Garmin or a heart rate monitor, is that the cool thing about all these gadgets, whether it's a Garmin, a heart rate monitor, or a glucose monitor, or whatever, is they can build your confidence, because like I say, the data corroborates experience. And then you get these experiences where like Joe, this from your last couple of years with the stupid scare, where you're being told you're sick when you're not. When your heart races and your pace doesn't go up, something's wrong, right? But if your heart rate goes up, but your pace is like you're just going, oh man, I can nail this, that's a completely different feeling, and that intuitively.
The whole subject to me is really interesting, because when you start to think about the stressors, and we're primarily talking about the physical stressors, I think about when I was younger and my training and everything I was doing, and I didn't realize just how important the mental stressors are. Being able, I would go out and train on the bike, 6, 7, 8 hours a day. And it was all long, slow, easy stuff. It was very different than what they're doing now. Oh, it's starting to come back, like zone
It's starting
two.
to come back. It is.
Yeah.
It is.
And, I worked with some pretty good guys, and one of them, who was a really well-known coach, started, weighting my bike down, and it mentally made me slow down and when people would come by me, I was okay with it. And it was such a relief. It was such a relief that I didn't have to ride. I didn't have to race somebody, and I could just ride 6, 7. I would literally ride till it was dark. And the fitness that I got from that was unreal. It's a shame I ended up with a IT band problem, but that particular season, it would have been very interesting to see what the results would have been, because everything that I was feeling was collaborating. The time out there, it's like a 100-miler. If you can't go out and put the time in and experience it slow, then how are you going to do it fast? You're not. It's just not. It's a dream. You have to be able to mentally be able to deal with that, not just physically, but mentally be okay with that many hours out there.
Well, like you said, letting go of that stress. It's like I tell people, one of the analogies I use is when you see a child that hasn't been corrupted by shame and humility and wondering what everybody else thinks about them, if they're playing or they're doing something, if something doesn't work, it doesn't work, and they move on, right?
Yeah.
They try something different without going through am I doing something wrong and I'm ashamed? It's like you just kind of got to get into that childlike mentality and but with that drive of a competitor, and just adapt and move forward.
Yeah.
It's really cool. So Bree, let's I keep wanting to take this back to you. Let's talk about CCC and Kodiak and all these things that these are your most recent races. You're riding a wave.
Mm-hmm.
You probably should put at least a 50K on your books in 2 or 3 weeks, just because you're gonna get a bounce from it.
Yeah.
And you got quad dipsy, right?
Well, I'm not sure, to be honest. Joe and I were just talking about this because it's interesting. So I feel like there's a part of me that feels like I want to just shut it down, because I have done so well this season. I've done, a lot of different races. I ran Boston. I started my season with Way Too Cool 50K, had a really good performance there, finished, I think, 8th woman overall there. And then followed that up with Boston. Then I ran, Broken Arrow. I didn't do the 46K, but I did the 23K, did really well there. And so, part of me just kind of feels like I'm kind of ready to just go into my off season, to be honest, and not have to put anything on my calendar. So I'm right now thinking about not doing anything else. And if I did something, to your point, it would definitely be, something very, maybe
50K.
Maybe a 50K, but like a neighborhood race.
Or marathon.
Yeah. I'm just saying that to kind of keep you on that wave you're on. Like you're gonna get a big adaptation from it. From this race, because look at the bounce you got from CCC going, and then you had a training block going into Kodiak,
right?
You just got better.
Yeah, and I think so, but I also think I'm a real advocate for being consistent, and so I think I definitely recovered after CCC, and then I slowly started to build back. And I did not know how I was going to do it at Kodiak. It's hard, right? When you're running ultras, you can go in fit, prepared, but at the end of the day, whatever the day hands you, this is my philosophy, at least, is what you're handed, because anything can go wrong. You can fall, you can have environmental conditions to manage, you know what I mean? So,
yeah. As my friend Bruce LaBelle said once, the only thing you can prepare for in a 100-miler is that something's going to happen that you didn't prepare for.
Well, that's it. 100K is the same way, and so it's just really, you're going along. I'm not running, anything near a 200-mile, but nonetheless, you're racing, so I'm racing these events. And so all that is to say, I hear what you're saying as far as this fitness bump, but I feel like It's going to be, it's going to be really one of those things where if I decide to do something between now and the end of the year, it'll just happen, But as far as Quad Dipsy, I'm just not really sure right now. I just may want to enjoy my Thanksgiving and, because Quad Dipsy is right after Thanksgiving, and I may just decide, you know what, I'm just going to wait and just perhaps do something in December.
I think part of the reason why she's also thinking this way is because in Kodiak, she had a near fall, which caused a small lower leg injury, and she still ran the whole race with the lower leg injury.
Well, it wasn't an injury.
Well,
it was just a niggle. It was just
I mean,
niggle.
it was, I saw, it was very swollen.
No, it wasn't that bad.
I'm just saying.
You guys sound like a married couple.
I didn't want to talk about that.
Okay, well, but
yeah, so
it's better now.
But I mean, like, okay, so like CCC, the UTMB-CCC. Now that's 100K, but it's comparable to a lot of mid-level hundreds in terms of difficulty, the time out there, all that stuff. So tell us about that. Tell about that experience.
And you're absolutely right, because that is an entirely different animal. I mean, I'd never raced in Europe before. Joe had, I hadn't. It was important for me to experience that race because it was one of my bucket list races from, when I first started running ultras in the early 2000s. I always wanted to go to Europe. I always wanted to run one of those distances, maybe the 100, maybe the 100K. So for me to qualify, get the stones, and then go there to compete was huge for me, and I know, I'll just say this because some people listening to this podcast may say, they don't like UTMB as an organization, because they feel like UTMB has come into the United States and, triggered, an increase in prices, and they've gobbled up all these other races and yada, yada, yada. I don't care. At the end of the day, this is my experience and I get to decide. So I chose to participate in this program, so to speak, that UTMB has, where you run races, you get qualifying stones, and then you enter a lottery. And so, I was happy to be chosen and to have the opportunity to go run a race that I've been wanting to run since long before Ironman Corporation, I believe, absorbed UTMB and started this infiltration, so to speak, of coming into the US and gobbling up smaller races. So I'll just say that. However, that being said, to be there and to go through the logistics of, running in the Italian Alps, the Swiss Alps, and the French Alps in the same race is pretty darn cool, and then to have the climate change. It started raining at about 5 p.m. The race starts at 9. By 5, it started raining. If anyone listening was following the UTMB and the CCC races, or just the races in general, you would know that the weather was definitely a factor. And so I had an opportunity to, I think, experience various conditions. The terrain changed. When you introduce water to technical trails, it makes it very slippery and very, dangerous too, because you're trying to stay upright. So the degree of sort of like safety and the intensity of the course then becomes, it just elevates, so to speak. So I think for me, I feel like I got the full experience. I had an opportunity to use my winter weather gear that was required for me to have available. I experienced running in the dark. I experienced, the weather change. I experienced the landscape of, running in the Alps, village, running through the villages and seeing these people who live there, all year round came out, and they were so excited to see all of these racers coming through their village. And it was pretty cool. And then to finish, in Chamonix, and, I've watched the finish for that race for so many years, similar to what, I feel like it would be to race the Tour de France, right? And to enter the Champs-Élysées and to experience the grandness of all that. I feel like when I ran into Chamonix and was heading to the finish line, I mean, there was a moment where I was like, this is it. Like, I've actually done this. Like, I actually did this race, and it was hard, over 18 hours, which I did not.
100K for 100K.
100K.
I told her early on,
100K.
she asked me, how should I, do some of the training for this? Because I've done quite a bit of racing in Europe. And I said, find the steepest hill you can find and just go up it and down it all day long.
Yeah.
No, but basically those climbs are, 1,000 meters climbing or whatever in 1 mile or whatever. It's pretty crazy how steep some of those climbs are.
Yeah.
And so people don't realize, like I was up on a couple of those climbs and I was watching people, like some of them, you can't even run them, but they're just power hiking.
Yeah. Yeah. And the elevation, just managing the elevation, so it's 62 miles and over 21,000 feet of gain.
Ouch. Whoa.
So,
that's more than Western States.
That's more than Western States. That's more than Leadville. That's more than TRT 100, which I've,
in 100K.
I mean, in
100K.
Yes.
Not 100 miles. Yeah.
So it is substantial.
Now, the other thing that I saw in UTMB is the competition in the 40 and 50-year-old female at CCC. It was deep.
It was. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I was surprised because, you're able to get on before the race and you're able to filter, by event. So for the 100K, I was able to filter, how many women were competing and then how many different nations were represented and then how many, females and then females by age category. So they really allow you to filter down. But I was surprised. I told Joe, I populated the number of women that were in the 50 to 59 category. And I was actually surprised how many women in my age division or, 50 to 59 category were there and from different countries. So it was actually pretty cool to see that,
Yeah, you were, I don't remember, but I think in the pre-race, I think you were rated as one of the top females in your age group.
I was.
But you weren't like the favorite.
I was not. There were, I think, 4 other women that were ahead of me. I think I was like number 5 or number 6 or something.
In the 55 to 59.
Exactly.
There was a lady from Italy that was leading for the majority of the race. It was towards the end where she broke down and Bree passed her.
And I had no idea. I was not aware because there's no way of knowing. I mean, when you're racing, you're not, everybody has their bib that's placed on the front. And so, I'm in the dark, so I can't really stop and shine my light on someone's torso every time I see a female to see, or to talk to them to say, hey, are you in my age division? Or, you just have no way of knowing.
Well, and the conditions that, once you got into darkness, it was wet and dark. I mean, sure, you were racing, but part of it was also survival mode.
For sure. I mean, I was just wanting to stay upright. I mean, there were people out there with poles that were struggling to use those poles, because the trails had become so slick and wet. And the steep sections, good luck using those poles. I mean, I don't use poles. I mean, I did for a very short time out there. I tried to use them and then I gave them back to Joe. I said, here you go. You can take these. I'm not going to use them. They're not going to do anything.
That's me. I don't use poles either.
I've run Wasatch. I've raced in Colorado, Rocky Mountains, and
But you have to train with them.
Yeah, I think you have to be comfortable.
If you look at Remy Bonnet and all these guys who train, the cross country guys, skiers, they're fit in the upper body.
Ski, so.
She's not gonna. But you actually gave me an idea for race directors out there. This would be an interesting idea. This is a little caveat, but they have a chip in these race tags. They should make a little beeper. So when you pass somebody in your age group that lets off a little beep, it would start a nice little race between 2 people. What do you think? No? I think it'd be awesome.
We don't need more technology invading our lives. That's my opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you had this great event and finished, and then you guys spent a few days afterwards also touring around and living the life. This is part of what we want to explore, is not just the racing, but the OFM lifestyle and the recovery and how you guys were able to do stuff. So tell us about what you did afterwards.
Yeah, so we actually stayed at a friend's in Switzerland after for a couple of days, and she wanted us to to check out Switzerland. So we stayed with her, and then we went on to southern Germany. Joe's mom is from southern Germany, and so we really wanted to experience that and go, south towards Bavaria, and that was amazing. I mean, the trails there, the Zugspitze and the Alpspitze, I think I'm saying it correctly, are incredible.
I didn't want to come.
So you weren't trashed to where you couldn't run.
No,
you hike and run. That's what people need to know.
Tell Joe.
So this is funny
this
because
this is great.
I wanted to get more running in, and so I was just like, Bree, you don't expect you to go running with me, but I'm going to go do a run. And she goes, no, I'll tag along. And we just went at a nice little pace, and each day it was a little faster and a little longer, a little faster and a little longer. And I was like, man, if I did that race, I think I would be trashed. I don't think I'd be training right away like that. But I was pretty impressed that she was able to get out and do those runs. I'll have to send them to you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you should, because it's funny because, Ironman California was this weekend.
Yeah.
And this one guy from Norway, Newt, he got third in his age group, and it's a competitive age group. He was 19th out of the water, first off the bike. He crushed the bike, and he's a big Viking built guy, and a couple of little skinny Argentinians passed him about 2/3 through the marathon.
Yeah,
and beat him because it was warm. But I've got video of Newt jumping up and down an hour after he finished.
Yeah.
Wow.
He was just like, and we went out to dinner that night.
Yep.
And and they got up the next day for the awards, and we went to the awards, and then we went up to Nevada City. I got them aligned, and then they went and drove all around Tahoe, and they're on their flight now back. They toured San Francisco today. They got on their plane at 5, and they're on their way back to Norway. But he was like blown away because his buddy Chris, who had to DNF because his back gave out, but Chris gave him a Vespa like on Wednesday or Thursday in a practice, and he noticed the difference. And after we had dinner on Thursday and we talked more about it, he decided to use it in his race, and he just crushed it.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's the thing, I mean, I think that's the other thing for me.
The recovery aspect
is the recovery.
Yeah.
And of course, let's frame that. We got to redirect the thinking here. It's not because you actually recover faster; it's because you prevented the damage, the cellular and mitochondrial damage you need to recover from.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
The fats, the hormones, the recovery process, the inflammation, all of the above.
You eliminate most of that. So now the body. Now here's the other end of it. Now your body, instead of focusing on recovering from damage, it's focusing more on the adaptation to get stronger, fitter, faster, which is what led you into Kodiak.
Ta-da!
Ta-da!
Exactly. Yeah. And Kodiak was awesome. I mean, I loved, I had run that race 2 years ago, and then I didn't return last year because the fires, and they rerouted the course, and I didn't want to do the rerouted, version. So I said, no, I'm going to wait and come back this year. So I did. And I mean, I felt great. I didn't, I didn't bonk. I had, I feel like I had consistent energy throughout. I took almost 30 minutes off my time from 2 years ago, which is huge. And to, your point, finished second woman over 40, won my age division, 15th or 16th woman, I can't remember, overall, 55th overall. So, I mean, again, I just think that it's the whole thing, right? It's the whole thing. It's understanding how to pull all those pieces together. But I did have, crew. You can't have any pacers at any of the UTMB races, which is fine. I'm fine with that. But my crew, I was very intentional in telling them, I need a Vespa. Every time I saw my crew, which was, between every 7 to 12 miles or something, I made sure that I did have the Vespa consistently. And then I didn't require a ton of gels. I didn't require a ton of, waffles and shoes and that sort of thing, and I felt great. Felt like I had consistent energy. Ate an avocado with a little bit of salt. had some potato
Those
chips.
are always good. You know?
Yeah.
Maybe a slice of watermelon or orange or something like that. That's what I do.
Yeah. I don't do the fruit thing. I'm just not a fruit. I mean, I love fruit, but I just don't really do fruit at races. But if anything, I'm going to do more like broth, soup. I did take in some broth and for the sodium, and then I had some rice with it at UTMB. Yeah, it
Good in the
was
stomach.
It was great. I mean, that's for hundreds even. That's my go-to. So, but to Joe's point, I felt like I bounced back really well after UTMB and then after Kodiak. And I think just to kind of touch on UTMB, the hardest thing about, honestly, after the race was getting used to the jet lag. That was a thing. I mean, I'd say that was probably the biggest adjustment we had to make was
when you went over or coming back.
Coming back was hard too, but going there
it was harder.
Sure.
Because you're flying east. It's like when Asia's even worse than that. It's like if you fly over to Asia, most of the time it's relatively quick to get on, but when you come back, my God.
Yeah, it's easy. It was way easier coming back for sure. Mm-hmm. I feel like I adjusted pretty quickly
because we're coming back into our regular time zone.
But there, holy Moses, it was.
There's something I think they say when you fly east, the jet lag's worse. When you fly west, it's better. So when you're coming back from Asia, you're actually flying east until you get to the west. So it really messes up your clock. I used to go to Asia regularly in the early 2000s before Vespa became my day job. And man, it was really hard coming back.
Yeah. I mean, it just is. So, but I mean, I'm happy with my season. I feel really good. I'm excited about next year. I've already started to lay out my calendar for next year. I'm excited for Joe.
Yeah, we're gonna get Joe into the game now.
Yeah. I've always kind of wanted. I mean, I dabbled a little bit, but a lot of people don't realize that the health issues. First, it was COVID. My mom, taking care of my mom, that was a big stressor for us. She had dementia, and then I thought I would do some races, and it just wasn't prepared to do them. And but now, I think it'll be exciting.
Now, another thing we ought to talk about is like a lot of people like to say, because there's a lot of trash talk out there, because I think a lot of people simply just don't understand because when what we're talking about is your foundational physiology, and it's like I say, nobody looks at the foundation of a house when they're house shopping, right? They go and look at, but do you want a good foundation? Absolutely. So it's I think a lot of people dismiss it because they automatically default to the keto low carb, which it's got performance. There's no doubt about it that for almost everybody out there, there's a few outliers, but most everybody out there is going to suffer some really severe performance limitations.
Absolutely.
But then you have this high carb camp that just keeps pushing carbs and carbs and carbs, and they have no regard. They're not thinking about the unintended consequences of this is a god awful lot of sugar, which everybody knows too much sugar is bad, right?
Yeah.
And people don't understand. They say, "Where's the paper? Where's the expert saying that this could be working?" And it's like they forget. I think we've been robbed of our agency, and they forget that science begins with observation. And there's enough observational evidence out there. And Joe, you've certainly seen it with Bree. But you got Bree, you got Jeff Browning, you got Jenny Capel, you got Roxanne Woodhouse, you got Peter Mortimer, you've got, my God, look at Andrea Moore. She's completed 7 friggin' 200 milers since April, starting with the Arizona Monster 300, and she's got 2 more to do before she closes out her season. She's middle-aged Texas, big gal from Texas, and she's just, she's not trying to be fast or race it. She's just going through them and doing them and getting real. And she got on OFM through Michael McKnight, who got on OFM through Jeff, and she swears by the Vespa. And, but I mean, you've got John Olson. Remember John Olson? He went
I was mentioned
back
earlier. Yeah.
days, and he was struggling. And, when I started working with him, he was struggling. 5 years later, he's the 24-hour world champion, right? They just had the 24-hour, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And in 2013, he won the whole thing outright.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a guy who told me, he said, Peter, you don't understand. I was terrified. He said, it wasn't a question of if my stomach was going to go out. It was whether it was going to go out bad enough to throw my race.
Mm-hmm.
And, even Nikki Kimball, I got her on before things got bad with her. She was starting to see some GI stuff, and I got her on. And the first race she did was a schemo race. She won the dang thing outright. Wow. And so, we've got enough people, and you guys are certainly an example, who are living this lifestyle. And I mean, Kurt Madden, he's 70 years old, and just like you, he raced Nice. The Ironman World Championship, got third in his age group at Nice, the 70-plus age group. 5 weeks later, Ironman California goes even faster, just like you did at Kodiak. He won his age group and was like over 3 hours ahead of second place. And then in 3 weeks, he's going to Marbella for the half Ironman championships.
Wow.
Peter, I think it's interesting for the viewers or the people that watch this. I think a lot of people are looking at all these people pushing the high carb 90, 120. And I think that they're thinking, like, I even heard some people make comments I looked to bike racers and what are they doing? But bike racing and ultras are a completely different animal. I've done them both. I've done them both at a very high level.
Yeah, bike racing,
cycling
is a completely different animal from triathlon and ultra running in terms of the metabolic output needs. I mean, you're going to need more carbs in bike racing because of what goes on in bike racing, but it's still, yeah.
But to my point is I wanted to pull it back for the viewers that, let's put things in perspective, because I think that a lot of the people are going, oh, the fat's good if you're going to do 200 milers, but, well, I mean, I'm going to do 100 miler, or I want to do Western States. And, I want to be like, these guys, although Killian was taking the olive oil thing. I don't know the details of that. But if you really break it down at the end of the day, I mean, 1409 is 830 mile pace. And 830 mile pace is zone 2. And maybe for some of the elite guys, zone 1.
It's low zone 1, low zone 2, zone 1. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not in comparison to running a 10,000 meter race in 27 minutes. You don't need all these carbs. I think they're trying to find something. And this, I can go down the road with the bicarb thing too, but I'm not going to. I'll leave that for another day.
Yeah, but we can talk about it. I can talk about it. You can talk about it. It's basically taking people beyond their physiological limits by using the bicarb to buffer lactate.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote about it in my Smart Running page 20 years ago. I mean, it's not new. It's been around for a long time, but there's health consequences to it, and there's gastrointestinal issues to it. If you're relying on it all the time, you're not letting your body adapt to the lactate buildup. And when you think about the lactate buildup, the shorter races, 800 meter races, 1500 meter races, it's a very quick spike of lactate. When you're doing a 100-mile race, it's a slow breakdown of muscle. It's a slow breakdown of the body, and you slowly build up this lactate over time. You're not getting these huge rushes of it. So it's a different animal. But I'll just say this, going back to, Jim Walmsley's amazing 1409, it's still at the end of the day, 343 marathons.
Yeah.
So, for the people who are going, this is great
for marathon distance.
Yeah, it's not, it's, I mean, of course you have to look at the course, the uphills, but hey, it's a lot of downhill too. So I think, and then that gets into a whole nother realm, the cardiovascular vascular system versus the muscular system. And they're different animals, and they're both equally as important, but nobody ever, well, now people are addressing it more, but I think at the end of the day, it's a complete picture. And I think if you're training hard and you're training long and you're training your body right, you have to support that muscular system, because if you don't, welcome to injury count.
And this is the other side of fat metabolism. That's why we call it optimized fat metabolism, because it's not just about burning fat via beta oxidation. It's about metabolizing fat, because all that stuff you're talking about, that's done on fat metabolism. Glucose is simply an energy source, period. It does nothing but provide energy, whereas fat is delivered through fatty acids, triglycerides, and cholesterol, lipoproteins. And that metabolism of lipoproteins to get the fat for the energy involves a lot of other things in terms of rebuilding your cells, your mitochondria, your hormones, your enzymes, everything that's done.
Nobody wants to talk about.
And nobody wants to talk about, because it's not simple. It's
well, I was going to say,
it's incredibly complex, and it's I would even put it in a spiritual context. It's a miracle. Life is a miracle. And, we humans get ahead of ourselves and think we understand it all. And that was like let's go on a little tinfoil hat conspiracy theory thing. Like when they started talking about the mRNA technology for vaccination during COVID, I was like, my biologist antenna went on, and I read all the stuff they were talking about at the time, some really deep analysis. And I'm like going back to my UC Davis biology classes where I was getting hammered by the pre-med, pre-vet students, because you have to take all the same general ed, right, when you're in the science department. And I'm like, okay, they're telling us it does this. It creates this spike protein. And I'm like, but what about everything else is going on? Because I understood how mRNA unravels DNA and then codes it for protein synthesis and all this. And it's like, when you start unraveling DNA strands, you've got all kinds of stuff going on there. And and maybe being able to insert something to make a spike protein is one of them. But what about when you get in there and start messing around with creation, literally, you're opening a Pandora's box, and they didn't know, they didn't want to know. And that was my big question.
They didn't want to know.
They didn't want to know. It was, but that's the thing. It's like all this is done via fat metabolism, and to a point, to bring up the COVID thing again, they made that big deal about the lipid nanoparticle delivery system, right? Which was fat, because that's what had to make it metabolized. And that's my point. It's like, you got to get your fat metabolism up to rebuild and get stronger, just like how Bree did after, that adapt, because she didn't damage herself, and you guys were able to go for recovery runs after. Her body didn't focus on recovering. Her body focused on getting stronger and faster. And it was a big payout at instead of chasing down 50-year-olds, she was chasing down 40-year-olds.
Yeah.
And some 30s and 20s.
Yeah, exactly. Huge field of 20 and 30-year-olds.
And so, there's so much to it that we don't know, but even though we don't know so much, the actual execution of it, and you guys are living proof of it, is actually pretty simple. Eat whole, unprocessed foods, use your carbohydrates wisely, get out and get sun. Don't be afraid of the sun and outdoors, and periodize your training. A lot of 80% aerobic and then 20% higher intensity work, and don't be aware of all these modern stressors. I mean, it's not hard to execute. It's trying to nut it out, and
there's the whole mental side of it as well. It's like being able to go out there and enjoy your day, being able to go out and do your training and not go crazy like, I gotta do this, or I gotta, I'm out here and I'm not having fun. And you got to be having fun. You got to be out there enjoying what you're doing. If you're not enjoying it, there's a problem. And then there's the whole aspect of fat for the brain. How healthy is your brain? If your brain isn't healthy, most likely the rest of your body's not healthy.
We're talking about that earlier on our bike. We had our monthly cyclist meeting, and we were talking about that you get your you're just always mentally able to deal with things better after doing a run or during a run or a bike session,
Just reliever.
right? You just like, I do my best thinking when I'm out on the trail, just, and I'm better to come back to deal with the stupidity of life. Like this, it's like what we're talking about is based in such sound science and basic evolutionary biology that nobody even argues about it. Right. But because nobody argues about it, they've all forgotten these basics that, humans are meant to burn fat as their main aerobic energy source, and somehow we've got, and because of the shift in foods and the whole dietary health hypothesis that led to the dietary guidelines in the 80s, where carbs formed the base of it, we've corrupted it to the point where what they're saying about you need carbs and you've got your glycogen actually is true for that in that context. If you're eating a lot of carbohydrates, you're dependent on those carbohydrates.
Oh yeah, you're a slave to them.
Yeah, yeah, and people don't realize
if you're hungry again.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. And so, like you say, Joe, this hyper high carb, I don't think a lot of people realize the unintended consequences they hold. And I get it. If you're an elite and you're trying to make a living as a professional triathlete, ultra runner, cyclist, and especially the cyclist, if you're getting paid, if you're a top level domestique and you're getting paid 6-7 figures to go attack, the leader and wear them out, well, that's, that's what you do because you're getting paid for it. But most people are not getting paid to do it. It's costing them money. Yeah. And they don't realize that emulating the pros, especially because they don't have the metabolic output needs that the pros do, they're probably actually harming themselves more by following what the pros do.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Yeah, I do as well. Yeah,
if you're not fully sponsored, making a living, able to train 5 or 6 hours a day, every single day,
and recover
and build a proper foundation, and average person working 9 to 5, they're trying to fit these workouts in. They're always hitting the intensity, and they don't realize how bad it is for them in the long run.
Yeah,
and then you just have to look to nature, Peter. You know this. I read this book about the American Indian diet, and it was really interesting. It's there that we were opportunist eaters. We ate what was there. At certain times of the year, we would eat meats, nuts, and seeds. At certain times of the year, if there was a buffalo, we eat the heart, the liver, the organ meat. The
muscle meat was left for the dogs, the coyotes and stuff.
Yeah, and so we've gotten so far. People go, "That's gross. That's disgusting," but they've probably never been truly hungry either.
They've never had tripas tacos.
Yeah, there you go. But it is interesting that we've come this far, and it was all built on that food pyramid scale. And I think people realize now that pyramid is all wrong. But
I think that once again, I'm going to put my conspiracy hat on and ride, but I think also people need to get their agency back. And when they realize that so much of these major policy decisions that are being made in the sake of public health and well-being, if they step back and realize that there's huge monetary incentives driving it, like the whole COVID vaccine thing, it turns out now that was just a big money scam, right? Because they downplayed acquired immunity, which probably half the population had by the time the vaccines were rolled out. They trashed all the other things like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and so that. And then when they came out with the food pyramid, what did it support? It supported all the very highly profitable storable foods, and not the fresh foods, because your storable, shelf stable type foods, they're cheap to produce. They're very high profit margin, whereas your fresh foods, like your dairy products, your produce, your meat, the margin's very low on those things. And so these big producers of these things, the soy, corn, wheat, they have the extra revenue to put into lobbying and marketing. And so you start peeling back the veil on what's driving a lot of decisions and messaging. I want to call it propaganda. I really do, but I'll say messaging that goes out to the public. It's like there's a big monetary thing. Like one of the things I find funny right now is all the marketing on caffeine and how coffee is good for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's like, what's that?
I do love my coffee.
It's got its trade-offs. It's
right. But we all know what happens to Joe when his diet becomes coffee and pastries.
No more. No, I've not had pastries.
He's way better.
Right. But it's like I enjoy my coffee too, and I think I've had my first cup this morning in about 5 or 6 days. Right. I'm trying to scale it back because caffeine is an ergogenic aid, but it's also known as a vasoconstrictor.
Yeah.
And it's a diuretic. And,
actually, there was a study out of Germany that they did, which was very interesting. It's a diuretic when you are inactive. The study found that when you were exercising, it ceased to become a diuretic. It's a pretty interesting study.
I'll argue that with you. In the heat, caffeine is the kiss of death. It's a diuretic.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Any significant amounts of caffeine. I've seen too many endurance athletes. Yeah. They'll take like a double espresso love goo, which is 100 milligrams. And like in the cold weather, it's money, right?
No.
In the cold weather, it's money, but in the heat, it'll kill you. So,
absolutely.
But I mean, I
find the opposite of what you want, really.
Right, but when you see all these studies coming out about how good caffeine is for you, it's like, there's what's driving this is money. And it's like, I'm not saying don't stop drinking coffee. I'm not saying don't use caffeine as an ergogenic aid in a race. But if you think it's the next miracle drug, just like, same thing with like, kale being a health food. If you look at the primary literature on kale, it's like chemical warfare because it's one of the biggest of the cruciferous vegetables. It's one of those that binds minerals in your gut like crazy, so you become nutrient deficient.
Just like spinach can be also if you don't cook it will it
reduces the oxalate load. So people have these things when all these studies come out like this is the greatest thing, and it's like if you're eating a lot of raw spinach or raw kale thinking it's healthy, you're doing yourself a lot of harm.
Exactly.
Peter, you also made me think about vasodilation and how interesting it's so important in athletics because you want to maximize blood flow, and we're talking about caffeine and how it does the opposite of what you want. But then it clicked in my head. It's like the endothelia of your blood vessels and is so important, and when you're taking in those sugars, that's having a significant effect on your body's ability.
Absolutely, and that's where. Joe, that's where when they say, like a lot of the people who poo-poo fat metabolism, they say, well, oxygen's the limiting factor because when you're doing energy production via beta oxidation, it takes twice the oxygen per ATP as it does for glycolysis. Well, they're basing that based on a static amount of blood flow. And when you get really well fat adapted, your vascular distensibility, which is the ability for your cardiovasculature, your veins, your capillaries, your arteries to stretch and contract based on the need. But when you're full throttle racing, you want all your blood volume in there, and you want those things stretched to max. And that's where that's why we can see the numbers we're seeing, where Peter and Jeff can literally go all day at race pace, ultra running race pace, burning over 1.5 grams of fat an hour. Or a minute per minute, excuse me. And they can even sustain over 2 grams a minute for 20 minutes, which is unheard of.
So you got to start thinking, I totally agree. And when you break down the physiology, it makes all the sense in the world. And you see a lot of guys that are, really fast guys, and they come into, I'll just use Western States as an example again. You can choose any race you want, but they're really fit, they're really fast, and yet somehow they peter out, and they're trying to figure out what is it. Like, I'm I'm running fast, I'm running long, I'm putting 120 miles a week, I've won all these races. What happened at this race? And they don't want to look at the simple things, which is diet and what you're putting in your body. Because I think in there lies the answer for a lot of these guys who are not successful at the 100-mile distance or struggle, past a certain point. I think there's a lot of physiological things going on that they're not aware of.
Well, yeah. And Western States is one of those races, like it's also the same with Angeles Crest. Western States is the first real big race of summer, so everybody's starting to taper. Most of the high carb guys are tapering in May, so they don't get as much as they're trying to get heat adaptation. If you're trying to stuff calories down at that 90 to 140 grams an hour and try to cool yourself and run at a high pace, it's basically allocation of resources, and you're going to come up short in one area or another.
Yeah.
Right. Because you got to shunt blood to your skin surface to thermoregulate yourself. You got to have blood going to your muscles to cool you.
Thank you very much. Yep.
And you need blood going to your epithelial cells to digest all those calories you're pushing down.
I mean, that's running. You're overcoming gravity, so strength to weight ratio, and you're overcoming internal body heat, and they're dousing themselves with ice and everything. They're not thinking about what they're putting in their body and how it's creating heat within the body.
Well, and they're not, yeah, and they're also not thinking about, they're also thinking in a very one-dimensional thing, like, okay, I'm expending this many calories, I need to try to put this many calories back in.
Yeah.
Right? They're not looking at, okay, I've got calories on me, because even these lean ultra runners have enough fat calories to run 100 miles on doing, say, 40 competitively at 40 to 60 grams an hour.
Yeah.
Right. They just learn to tap into that.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the lactate thing. So the bicarb they have today, I don't know, you know that the Morton is an encapsulated bicarb, because I had this conversation with Dr. Edwards, because just like you, he said the same thing. Bicarb has been around forever, and they've got all these different protocols, because the thing with bicarb is because we humans are acid digesters. Our stomach acid is very low pH. The problem with the bicarb is if you take too much in, it's like, remember when we were kids, we make the baking soda vinegar rockets? Yeah, that's what happens when you take in too much bicarb.
And in cycling, you're not bouncing back and forth.
Right.
Cycling, you're nice and steady, easy to eat, easy to drink, easy to digest.
Right.
Running,
so the Morton, they figured out the way to encapsulate the bicarb so it bypasses the stomach and gets into the small and large intestine before it's released to provide that pH buffer to the lactate that's being produced. And so it's allowing people to go beyond what their normal physiology would handle in terms of lactate production, which means a whole lot more glycolysis. Now, I just saw something new that really got me thinking. This was in the sedentary population. They were looking at VO2 levels in sedentary people since COVID. And what they're seeing is this big fall off in VO2 based on lactate. But here's the deal. And I think this has to do with ultra endurance athletes too. This is very germane. It's got me thinking, it's like, okay. So my thinking with the whole stomach and gut thing is now evolved into one more thing. So I always talk about how all the oxidative stress and lactate load of consuming a lot of carbs erodes your gut and stomach over your GI tract over time. And, we've got protocols to restore that. But, one of the byproducts, and Jeff Browning was actually a victim of this, because he had developed candida, which is very common. You're aware of that, Bree, with your work. Okay. So, when you pump a bunch of carbs down, especially if you're doing them racing and all that, your biome gets burnt down, your rainforest gets burned down. The biome that resides there is less, and it's more focused on sugar-loving bacteria, fungi, and archaea, because candida is a fungus, which makes it hard to kill. Okay, so guess what? since COVID, what they're seeing is a lot of sedentary people with long COVID. They have no VO2 levels because their lactate starts shooting up. So they go into glycolysis instantly.
Yeah.
Okay. But here's the deal. And this is a chemistry thing. It's not L-lactate that's being produced by muscle metabolism. It's D-lactate. And D-lactate is produced by bacteria. And so what's happening is, what I think is happening similarly with ultra runners is, that point, you've seen it, Bree, with several people like Roxanne and Jenny were struggling before they started working with me. John Olson was struggling. I mean, a lot of people were struggling, pukers, right?
Gosh, yeah.
I mean, right. And Lambert-Sanders in the pro triathlon. Okay. What I think is happening is not only are they eroding their stomach and gut over time, but they hit a point where all of a sudden their biome shifts to where it's doesn't have that balance. And all of a sudden the biome that likes sugar is doing a lot of sugar, and it's populated to the point where it's producing a bunch of D-lactate. And then all of a sudden they're starting, because that's what I'm seeing, like Lionel Sanders and Courtney Dauwalter are like the latest victims. They try the high carb fueling and it's backfiring badly on them. And I think what happens is they start producing, not only have they eroded their stomach to where it's sensitive, but they're that biome is starting to go into heavy glycolysis and produce a bunch of D-lactate. And if you're lactate, it doesn't matter whether it's L-lactate or D-lactate. And I'm okay with being wrong, but I think that's another factor now, is the lactate being produced by their biome when they're hyper fueling. It's probably one of those things, they hit that point of inflection where that starts to become significant.
Yeah. That's interesting.
It's a whole new rabbit hole to go down. And I'm like, ooh, this is interesting. And like I say, I want to go down it, and I could be totally wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is a real thing.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. We'll have to do a little bit of,
because you guys have seen it in triathlon and ultra running. It's like these people will be unstoppable. Then they'll start to have GI problems, hit and miss. And then all of a sudden it's like, they're just dead in the water pukers.
Yeah. And you definitely don't want to be doing that.
Yeah.
I think we're going down a good road with all of this stuff. And I like you said, there's so much money behind all these gels and all this quick energy. And there's so many people who like that immediate response of a sugar rush, and it makes them feel good. And I think that's where the money's at. It feels good. They feel it right away. They get their nice little gel packet. It's easy to take. I don't know. When I was doing all my rides and my heavy training, I was eating hamburgers, So.
Yeah. And little ham
sandwiches. Yeah. We had real food.
Roll-ups. That's what he would carry on his long bike rides.
My pockets would be full. I'd head out in the morning with a ton of food.
Yeah. Real food.
And ride all day and never bonk.
Yeah.
It's just
hours.
Yeah. And I'd like to try to take that and move. I mean, this is many years later. That was when I was in my 20s and early 30s. And now I'm going to be 50. What am I going to be? 58. So it'll be interesting this next year trying to do some of these races, ultra races, with a whole new set of plans, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see how things go.
Yeah.
Well, like I say, all you have to do is look across at your wife. We've got plenty of ultra runners doing that, and like Kurt Madden, like I said, he's still going at it hard and riding the wave like Bree is at the Ironman distance. And so I think it can be done. And I think that most people are doing sports if they're dedicated to doing a sport, whether it's hiking or triathlon or cycling or ultra running or marathoning. A big part of that is they want to be fit and healthy and have that longevity. But that missing piece is they've gotten this one-dimensional message that constantly tells them they need their glucose and they only have 2 hours of glycogen. And it's like I say, it's your fight or flight, or it's a bridge fuel, right? Glycogen and glucose is a fight or flight, it's a bridge fuel. So when you start running, glucose fills that gap till you ramp up your internal energy sources and you dilate your cardiovasculature. And the thing is, if we're using our energy the way evolution or God, or let's just say nature, made us to do, we have robust stores of glucose and glycogen because you're only using it for that transient fuel or that fight or flight fuel when you're doing pushes, whereas, fat, which is virtually unlimited, and you can convert it when you're metabolically fit. You actually, if you're pushing, your liver will take fat and make it into ketones and glucose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so to meet that metabolic need. And so, but if you're glucose dependent, if you're carb dependent, your insulin levels prevent your liver from doing that with fat.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Maybe, I don't know if you want to do this or not, but it may be interesting to your audience how Vespa helps the body to start to get to that process.
Well, we know it does that anecdotally, right? And as you guys know, because you guys are subjects, we're doing a study, and we're going to do a double-blind, placebo-controlled study at St. Mary's, and hopefully we'll get a paper published out of it. That's the goal, is to get a published paper, because we saw the effects of Vespa, and the numbers we're getting, the numbers that Peter and Jeff yielded. Like I said, nobody's seen numbers like that.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's aligned with what I'm saying. It's like Peter and Jeff, they can burn fat all day at race pace. And like I say, we're meant to burn fat aerobically. And you could see, like in the thing, every time we sped up the treadmill a little bit, you see a little blip of glucose to fill that gap. And then the body adjusted, backfilled it with fat until the next rise. Mm-hmm. And so it's pretty interesting. So
yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah. So anything else you guys got to say? I mean,
no, I think that's it. I don't think there's anything else to add. I think I'm good. I'm excited. I'm excited about next year, ready to jump into another season. Excited for Joe.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see what he does.
It'll be fun.
So yeah, I'm just excited to be, part of Vespa, and
well, you're a part of Vespa, and that's for sure. And
going,
and like Joe says, you exemplify the OFM lifestyle, because it's totally intuitive. Do you think you're on a diet?
No.
Gosh,
that's how she eats all the time.
no,
Right.
not at all. Not at all.
You know when you need to bring carbs in, when you need protein.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
It just is. I mean, I think Joe and I, if you saw how we live our lives, and you saw how we, I mean, it's even when we were in Europe, people were saying to me before I was there that, they're like, oh, wait till you get to to Europe, and the food and the pastries and da da da. And I'm thinking to myself, none of that sounds, sorry for those that are listening, but the pastries and all that was not exciting to me. I don't know. Joe and I have a very different viewpoint when it comes to nutrition and the way we look at it.
No, we don't.
No. I mean,
you collectively, Joe.
Collectively.
You collectively.
Oh, yeah.
So no, we agree on the same way of, fueling and how we look at nutrition. What I mean is, compared to the masses, we don't walk into a cafe, and there's no shame in that either for people that do. It's just that's just not our thing. We just, our lens is very different, and we love food. We enjoy it, but we also love really good, nutritious food, and I think we're just very aware of what we're eating, and,
and look at you guys. I mean, like I say, people need to look at the real life where the rubber meets the road. You look at you two in your upper 50s, and you guys look great. You look fit, you look healthy. If somebody said you had to go out and run a marathon right now, you could do it.
Yes.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
It's like I'm starting to run a little bit more and get consistently in the last couple of runs. It's like once I get to that 3-4 mile mark and the switch goes, it's like, if I need to run for a couple more hours, it would be no problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So.
And most people can't get around the block.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad.
Yeah. There's a lot of complexity to all of this, but I think for people who really want to go out there and do their best, I think it's important that they really take a look at this and try to research as much as possible. Because if you're willing to go out there and you're willing to pay all that money to enter that race and train all year to do that race, If you're missing this part of it, you're
Yeah.
missing a big part of it. It's like,
Yeah, that's foundational physiology, and you know, and you know, Vespa's a really good tool to kind of jumpstart that. That's what I look at it is. It's like, you know, as you know, as much as I love Vespa, and I think it's one of the greatest products out there, I don't sell it as a one-trick pony or a magic pill. I mean, it's like, no, there's all these other things you can do that work with it to make it even better, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And you have to know about all that and be able to apply all those other things too.
Right. And it's like, but as complex as it is, I mean, we've talked a lot, and I'm sure maybe we've lost some people along the way, but as let's just go back to it, the actual execution, like I said, you guys don't feel like you're on a diet. The actual execution, once you get it down, is pretty simple and easy and not stressful.
No.
Yeah, she literally stops eating at like 8 o'clock and
7,
and she doesn't eat again until like in the morning. I wake up, I want to have my coffee. I usually don't have a big breakfast, but she's, 11 o'clock she has her breakfast. So she's doing that whole, fasting without even, it's just natural to her. It's not work.
Yeah, that's a real OFM state, because I'm in that right now too, because a couple of Sunday night we overate, and I just like, okay, I'm going to do a 24-hour fast. And even when I got to 24 hours, I was like, I'm not really hungry, but I guess I'll eat. And then today I only had a little snack before I went out and ran. I had a cup of coffee in the morning, went all day, and I didn't eat till like 7 or 8 o'clock tonight again.
Yeah.
And it's like,
wow.
Don't do that while you're racing, by the way.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said, don't do that while you're racing.
No. It all depends on the training load, right? And I bet you notice that, Bree, when you're in a high training load, a fast is 12 hours. When you're like in a chill state like you are right now, it's like, I'm not really hungry. As long as you stay hydrated, it's like you can go all day without eating.
We talk about that.
It's an interesting thing to feel. Yeah.
And autophagy is real. I mean, I can't remember. It was a Japanese guy, but he won the Nobel Prize for autophagy, which is essentially cell cleansing. And it's, when you look at a couple of the things that are markers of longevity, and you certainly are emblematic of this, Bree, it's VO2 max and autophagy. I mean, you got to give your cells a break from the constant bombardment of food and get them to clear out. And so that natural fasting state of OFM, because I tell people, okay, we'll use numbers as a ballpark, they change, depending on the training load. A fast could be 8, 10, 12 hours if your training load's high. It could be 24, 36 hours if you're recover after a race and you eat a really high nutrient dense, nutrient balanced diet. You might not like I had Sunday night. I mean, we were having tacos and a molcajete, so we had like this protein rich meal, and it's like I had no desire to eat for 24 hours or more. And
I early on I noticed that, like when I followed my protocol, it was weird because I would get up in the morning, I wasn't really hungry, I'd have my coffee and go throughout my day, and it's like, oh my God, it's 3 or 4 o'clock and I'm not even hungry and I haven't even eaten. Now, I wasn't doing any sort of heavy training, or I was just doing light stuff. But when I start to fall, if I did fall off the bandwagon and I started taking in a little more carbs, I noticed it was like, I need to eat, I need to eat, I need to eat, I need to eat. And it was like constant eating. And then it was like, I'm never full. I'm never satisfied. Yeah. It's a really interesting.
And you feel like crap.
Yeah. On top of it. And you get bloated.
Yeah.
You carry a bunch of extra water on top of it all. It's
Yeah. So those are all, I mean, you're, like I say, you're emblematic of how you can slow the aging process. Cause there's a lot of talk about anti-aging and longevity out there and do this, do that. But, I think lots of physical activity in with the right diet and the fasting, like I said, I want to go back to this because it's important for the audience to know, is like, you don't want to have a highly structured, because all these online fasting things, it's all very metrically driven. And especially if you're a woman, but even a man, if you're supposed to be doing an 18.6 or something, and you get to hour 15 or 16 of your fast and you start thinking about food and you gut it out for the rest of the 2 or 3 hours, you've already blown a big goal of that fast, because once you start jonesing for food, it means your metabolism is going to turn down, your appetite's going to turn up, your storage will turn up, you'll overeat, you'll overstore, and you'll be back hungry again. Whereas like in the pattern you're in right now, Bree, it's like, okay, it's time to eat. I'm a little bit hungry, but it's like, if I didn't eat, if I waited another hour, it wouldn't be a big deal, right? Isn't that how you feeling?
Yeah, exactly.
It should just be seamless, because then you're not sending these metabolic signals of storage. You're just like, yeah.
But again, then with the people who try it, right, and you talk about how they try to push it, it's back to that same thing. It's like you're trying to force something it's not ready to happen.
That's exactly right. That's the point.
It's like you're training. It's like
and it backfires on you.
Yeah. Just let it happen. We're all we want the results now. And it's like, no, you just need to relax. Don't stress about it and let the process happen.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like I say, too many people, because I look at it from a lens of a biologist, but what I see happening is we're trying to engineer biology. Right? We make all these high structured plans. Everybody's had us to adhere to this plan, and
we try to solve these plans.
Yeah, and it's just like, and everybody gets fit into this one dimensional plan where nature doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So, all right. I think we'll close this off. That not only you guys are emblematic of what we're doing, but what people need to realize, whether they know it or not, we're all signed up for that big ultra endurance event called life.
Oh yeah.
And you guys certainly are living it to the max.
Yeah, I think we are. I think we're living it to the max.
No. Yeah. High five.
High five.
It's good talking with you, Peter.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No, thank you guys. And say hello to all your tribe when you see them, Stephen, Herr Strauss, and Rebecca and Alyssa. Tell Alyssa I still love her.
I will. Yes. Yeah. And thank you again. Yeah.
And we'll see you actually.
Yeah.
Soon.
We'll catch up soon.
Yeah.
We will.
Yeah. The test.
Oh, no, he's not going to be there.
Oh, you're not going to be there during the
Be at
test.
the test.
Oh, okay. It was just going to be with the physiologist.
Dr. Marks. Yeah.
Okay.
You're gonna do the test, man. And I'm real grateful for that, because this is the kind of stuff we need. And we started this study in late 2019, and we were in the middle of data collection in 2020 when what happened.
Yeah.
And it took all these universities, it took them years to figure out what they were going to do with their safety protocols. So it took, so we're hoping for great things.
Yeah.
Right.
We'll look forward to it.
Cool. All right.
Okay, Peter.
It'll be fun. And you'll have some good data on yourselves. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much. And we'll look forward to seeing the podcast and hearing it.
Yeah. And who knows, we might see each other soon enough.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Take care.
Good night.
Good night. Bye.